Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Man, excited to be back again, man. Missed last week. My apologies. My philosophy. You know what I'm saying? I was on vacation with my family, a much needed vacation down at out in Outer Banks, North Carolina. So it was
It looked
dope,
like y'all
man.
was having a great time.
Man, it was, bro. It was good, man. I think, because it's not the typical. It's not typical for us to do our vacation during that time. We usually
Right.
do it when I have a sabbatical in August. So it was cool to be on vacation last week, random, and it was a friend of mine, man, a solid brother in the Lord, man. I've known his brother for years, man. Him and his family wanted to bless my family, so we got to stay out there for a week. Beautiful home, crazy joint. We just had a good time, man. It was just good for us to just connect as a family and break the routine. So.
That's
So I'm
dope.
glad to be here, man. So we missed last Thursday, but we got a great show for y'all today. You know what I'm
Yes, sir.
saying? We intend to make up for lost time. It's
Yes,
just been
sir.
real hectic, man. It's been a hectic season. 4 has been a hectic season for us because of the transition to live. Strack is painting like crazy. Ministry is just crazy. A lot of people are trying to go to hell, and I'm trying to stop them. And it's just a bunch of stuff is going on. So we apologize for any
That is not
mistakes.
even. That's not even the funny joint that you said. I don't know why I'm laughing at that one, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, but it's true though. I mean,
Because I know you. Because I know you. Because I know
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know what's happening. You know what's going on. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of that. So we apologize for missing, but we got a show for y'all today, man. But first, before we do all that, we got to make sure that everybody knows that we back to the grill again. The grill
The grill
again.
again.
Back to the grill again. The grill again.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
cross-examine. I'm Curt Kennedy. He's Strack the Wolverine. And this is season 4, episode 19, man. We excited to be with y'all today, man.
Blah, 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 blah,
You know what
blah.
I'm saying? All the sound effects. We want all
All
that
of that.
smoke.
All of that.
Y'all know me. We want all that smoke. You know what I'm
We
saying?
hood out
So,
here.
yeah, that's right. So I
With
was
the bam, bam,
bumping your
bam,
Cocaine
bam.
Dream track with the Sosa sample. That's the joint. That actually, Cocaine Dreams is funny. That was my first Christian rap. Like I was a brand new Christian, and I was trying to think, how do I translate my conversion to the streets? I was still very connected to the streets. And I was like, how do I translate this to the streets? And so Cocaine Dreams was my first attempt at trying to do music that I could reach the hood and not just come up like, Jesus saved me, now it's true, and he can come and save you. I ain't want to just be real cheesy to these dudes, Not like that. Not that would be cheesy to anybody, but I think for dudes in the streets, man, Christian rap is like whack. It's amazing that it's what you're saying, the content. Like when evil desires to hear evil,
Right.
the dark wants to hear the dark, they don't want to hear the light. So even though we got the same aggression, we got crazy beats, the fact that we talking about Jesus will make people be like, man, I ain't trying to hear that, man.
For
I don't
sure.
want to
It
hear
don't
that.
even
So
matter.
it don't even matter. So that was my first joint, but that was such a throwback. But season 4, episode 19, man, we here. Strike, you know what I want to start, man? I want to start with something that we know a lot of people have talked about, and we refuse to do an episode on this topic, a full episode, because we knew a lot
Better
of people
not.
were going to do
I
it.
ain't. You might do it by yourself.
Nah, we gonna do. Nah, I was like, I ain't doing an episode. But let's get into what everybody has talked about this week. The slap heard around the world. Actually, saw the audio wasn't there for the actual slap, but we striking. We actually have the audio for the slap. Many people. Now you saw it. Everybody saw Will Smith walk on stage. You saw Chris Rock be like, "Uh-oh, King Richard." He was laughing,
Word
and
up.
then he
Word
hit
up.
him, but you couldn't hear what it sounded like. But me and Strack have it. Let's
That
play it right now.
exclusive. That exclusive.
Let's play the sound of the slap right now. That was the sound of the slap of Chris Rock and Will Smith. And that is my official last joke about it, because I want to have just a brief. This is for us. This is not our topic. Everybody's talked about this. Even Satan and the demons have talked about this joint. So we're just going to say a couple things just about it, just because we cross-examine and we got to say something, right? So first and foremost, so let me make sure everybody knows what happened. Will Smith.
I hope. I mean,
Everybody knows what happened. Chris Rock makes this joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, G.I. Jane. Will Smith walks on stage after laughing, smacks a dude in the face, right? Walks off stage, says, "Keep your name out my my wife expletive wife's mouth, right?
Yeah, keep my wife's name out your
Yeah,
mouth.
keep my wife's name out your expletive mouth, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what he's saying. So then that happens, and the whole world goes everywhere. So Strack, you've heard probably a million different perspectives on this, much as I have. How did it resonate with you? What did you think about it when you saw it?
I was like, damn. Nah, I'm bugging. But yeah, my initial reaction was like, what? What? Did this really just happen? You know what I'm saying? Because you don't expect to see that, especially not at like the Oscars, you know.
Right.
But this was
Straight
on
salsa,
some,
right?
yeah, this was on some like Kanye on another level. You know what I mean? Like Smith just went Kanye on Chris Rock, real rap, like, and man, there's so many ways, there's so many places we can go with this. You know what I'm saying? But we don't want to make it a whole show. I did think initially it was the fake jump off, like it was like, nah, come on, man, this is phony. And then you see his reaction, then you see him say all to keep my wife's name out your mouth stuff. But what really got me was Chris Rock's continuation. He couldn't continue to keep it cool. Like you could tell he was struggling. He said documentary 3 times for 3 different words.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like he struggled, man. I really felt bad for the dude. I really felt bad for him. I saw this thing that DL Hughley did discussing, you know, like how everybody's been thinking about Will in this scenario and nobody really been considering what Chris Rock went through or is going through or will go through for the rest of his life now, being known as the dude that got smacked at the Oscars by Will Smith, the good boy. So it's wild, man. Definitely Will should not have walked up and smacked him. He should have just talked to him. They friends, man. You know what I mean? Like they friends.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, I've only heard a couple people's takes on this, so I apologize if we're repeating anything you've heard. And again, this is not our show. This is brief, but you know, it's funny, man, because like I know I did stand up comedy for a little bit, so I understand what when you're obviously not at the level of these guys, right? But
you're not just gonna walk by. You did stand up comedy for a little bit,
man.
Like,
I actually
and not elaborate.
Yeah. So all right. So so I had after high school, I was always a comedian in high school. Like y'all know I crack jokes and stuff like on the show. So that's always been a part of who I am as a person. When I'm preaching on Sundays, I use a lot of humor in my sermons and stuff like that. Try not to distract from what I'm teaching, but that's just a part of who I am. So after high school, I was sort of trying to get a record deal, which I was really, really, really close. I think I've shared that before on the show. But I was also doing stand-up comedy. I wanted to try it because I was so funny in like all the schools I went. And then I learned like, okay, it's one thing to be funny around people who know you. Like when you in class and people know you funny, so you could say stuff and they just expect you to be funny, they laugh. It's another thing to stand up in front of a crowd of people who don't know you at all and see if you can make them laugh. So I did this, man. I went on a tour. I was actually, I lost one. I was in all these competitions and I got to the very end and the winner was going on Def Comedy Jam. Wow. And I lost by, I forgot how many votes there were. And the other dude, and he was funny. At the time, I wasn't smoking weed and stuff like that. And a lot of his content was about being high. So it was funny, but I couldn't even relate because I wasn't getting high at that time. It was afterwards. So I almost got on Def Comedy Jam, but then when that didn't happen, I just stuck to music, although I appreciate it. But it was fun to control a crowd, to be able to, even now when I'm preaching or especially preaching at a conference, 2,000 people, and you just, in a minute, you just cracking jokes and people laughing, and you understand the power of that. So what I watched was Chris Rock was basically just doing improv. He was just scanning the room, just kind of just having fun. It wasn't anything written. It wasn't that. And so he was just looking around, and then he sees Jada Pinkett. She's probably the only one at that point, because Tiffany Haddish had a bald head for a while. And she was dating Common, the rapper Common. She had a bald head for a minute. Right. So he might have said the same thing to her, but he was just scanning the room and he saw them. And I think he thought, those are friends. I know them. Now they were offended at him from 2018, when they did the Oscars So White boycott. Chris Rock, I think he hosted the Oscars that year, and they wanted him because Will Smith and Jada Pinkett were the ones who started that boycott. So they
really?
Yeah, they did. They were the ones that started that boycott, that hashtag Oscar So White. So I think they wanted him to join them, and he didn't. So there could have been a little bit of historical animosity, but that's the only thing I could. Obviously, we don't know these people; we would know. So I saw Chris Rock look around, and he saw Jada. He wasn't thinking alopecia at all. He just saw a bald head, and he's quick witted. That's what he does for a living. Quick on his feet, like me. I'm very quick on my feet. Boom! You think of a joke, it's funny. People laugh, and then you see Will Smith laughing. Jada Pinkett, Jada Smith. She sat back and kind of made like a face. But she didn't look like, huh?
But she was gritting. She had the I'm tired of this dude face. Like, this joke is whack.
Right. So Will Smith was laughing. And then it goes back to Chris Rock, and he starts to continue on. And then he says, uh-oh, King Richard. He's thinking Will Smith's going to come up and bear hug him or something, right?
Yeah.
And so Will Smith obviously smacks him. And then Chris Rock is kind of rattled for a second. And then they have that exchange. And that's when he said, keep my wife's name out your mouth, that's when you knew, I could see by his face, he's angry. This is real. This isn't.
Did you peep Rock's like right hand and shoulder a little
bit? Oh,
yeah.
For a second, he dropped.
He was about to.
He dropped. He dropped back for a second.
Yeah, I felt it. I saw it. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, he dropped back. Like, hold up. Yeah. Like, you might have been in some training or something. You might have been.
And he withstood, though.
He might be in Creed Part 3 for real. So,
hey, listen.
So, but that happened. So then he said, and then I saw the stuff behind it. And I'll just say this, and we're going to close this section out, because here's my thing about it, right? There's a lot of people that are saying that it's kind of heroic. A lot of people are saying both sides. Here's the thing, man, for me. And I'm speaking from obviously a biblical worldview. When you allow other men to sleep with your wife publicly, right? When you let another man make music, make songs, be out in public, and it's clear to everyone that he's having sex with your wife. When you make statements like, we don't want our marriage to be a prison, right? But then say, we don't want what we do, everybody else shouldn't do, but this is the way we do in marriage. Like, you've already publicly disgraced your wife. Mm-hmm. But even non-Christians wouldn't do that. Like, even non-Christians understand, like sometimes because we're believers, we think of things in biblical worldview perspectives, but there are a lot of non-Christians that understand that marriage is between a man and a woman, and you don't let other men have sex with your wife. If you want to be, in a polyamorous relationship, then go to Utah, right? That's where they get it. But like, even the world knows that you don't let other men have sex with your wife. And it became sort of a national story where Jada Pinkett was talking. I mean, she was talking like, man, she still loves the dude, right? When you do that, you've already publicly disgraced your wife. You've already allowed people to say things about your wife and about you in ways that are just despicable as it relates to marriage. So when you walk up on a stage and you smack another dude for making a joke about your wife to honor her, it's not heroic, it's hypocritical. Right. Because you've already dishonored her by allowing her to have sex with other men and other men to like claim her publicly, and you be okay with that. Like, fam, so to me, I was like, this isn't defending her honor at all. Like, you already damaged her honor and her worth to everyone who understands what marriage is, Christian and non-Christian.
It's an unhealthy situation. The whole marriage, the whole household. I mean, the kids, like, the only normal looking one is Will and his oldest son. Like, everybody else look a little weird and stuff, It's an unhealthy situation, man, all the way around. And the dude is broken. Like, it's almost like you would almost think that he was in a movie role when he walked up and smacked Chris Rock. Like, he was he took on a role real quick. You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't nobody messing with me out here.
But that's what Chris Rock thought. He was like, King Richard. He was like, he wasn't thinking like anything's going to really happen.
Yeah.
The wild part is what he would have done if The Rock had said that, John.
Yeah. I saw that.
You heard somebody say
that a bunch of times.
Or somebody else, like, but that to me is not even the issue. When people say it's like, whatever. To me, it's like, fam, you're not defending your wife. Don't act like keep my wife's name out your mouth. Man, keep other dudes' private parts out your wife, fam.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the real right there. Like, you've already given her a bad public name because you've allowed it to take place and making it seem like that's something that is okay for y'all. Well, I mean, I don't get it. So I think if anybody says
I don't buy it. It ain't okay with him. You know what I'm saying? You can see it. It ain't okay.
He was affected by it.
He's going through it.
Yeah, he is. So that's my thought on that, man. I know a lot of people have a lot of takes on it. one thing that to me, and this is why, when people talk about people who are woke, right? So, all right, there's levels to being woke, right? Sometimes I think people talk about people who are woke, and I think it's a mischaracterization. There are people who genuinely care about issues of race, and you've been able to smuggle that all in to dismiss it. I think that happens a lot. I think that happens a ton. But then there's other woke that's like, man, y'all are going so far that if the earth were flat, y'all would definitely walk off the earth. And so let me read you a headline that came out in NBC News. This is the headline.
Is this a Post Malone?
This should be a Post Malone. I mean, this is a Post Malone right here.
So we just rocking. It's a Post Malone.
This is a Post Malone right here. This is a post. Let me read you this whole thing. This is the head. I'm just gonna read the headline, and this is what I mean. It says this: Chris Rock's joke about Jada Pinkett Smith was rooted in racism and male patriarchy.
Yo, that's crazy. Everything is, though. Everything is. You didn't know?
Nah.
You didn't know.
Fam, hey, listen, man. This is why on Dave Chappelle's show. This is why Dave Chappelle, Rick James said, we shouldn't have never gave you niggas money. You know what I'm saying? He said, we should have never gave you niggas. Man, it's like, listen, man, when every day is Christmas, it's no longer Christmas. And this is why the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think just like there's no sin that has been eradicated, and there's always room to improve on a particular area. Racism is no different. All this talk about like what Christ has done, it's like, listen, the already not yet extends to race relations. It's not like he did all this, he tore down a wall of hostility. Well, if he did, then many in the church have historically built it back up. Right? So there's always room for that. There's room to address that and it not be woke and all of that. But when you do stupid stuff like this, right? Ignorant stuff like this, you take away from this is why Black Lives Matter, I couldn't stand them. Because like you took the real struggle, co-opted it, gave it a phrase that the phrase was cool, but you co-opted it, a real struggle, used it for your benefit. Sure, some things you brought some things to light, but ultimately, the calling everything the dismantling of Western family and white male
patriarchy. They just pocketed millions of dollars and retired, fam.
Right. But not even on that. But that's true. But I'm not even talking about that. Like the ideology that you brought, right?
The distortion.
The ideology you brought that you blamed on like white supremacy and white male patriarchy. And I tweeted this the other day, man. We gotta listen. I'm all with like calling out some things as white male patriarchy, white evangelicalism. I get it, right? I get it. There's some stuff that's true that I think that is true. But let's throw out the bathwater, but keep the baby, fam. There's a lot of things that are not white male patriarchy that are getting smuggled under that because everybody's offended right now. Like prohibitions against homosexuality ain't patriarchal and they're not evangelical. Those things are biblical. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that like I think white evangelicals were right on. There were things that they were wrong on or an overemphasis in their application, and I get it. So throw that bathwater out, but keep the baby, fam. Let's not go too far. And when I read stuff like this is like just ridiculous. Chris Rock's joke was rooted in racism. You know what that's going to make everyone think? Whenever someone brings up genuine concerns of racism or experience, they're just going to roll their eyes and be like, right. And no one's going to listen because of stupid stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's fake news.
How many stages is going to get attacked? Yeah, how many comedy stages? You know what I'm saying?
Like, yeah, bro. It's ridiculous. Man. It's wild. All right, let's get to our topic, man. We want to talk. We're doing the name of this show, the name of this episode or whatever is entitled "The Ideology and Evolution of Fake News." All right, let's break this down for what we're talking about, and then we're gonna walk through some things for y'all. And I appreciate this, and I want to get the people. Thank you to the people who thank us for bringing up things that other people don't. Like we don't. While I have friends who do this well. I think there's a place to talk about cultural events every time something happens and build a platform. That's not what we do. Sometimes we hit those things, but Strack and I try to think about other things that may be affecting the church or something like that. So that's what we do. That's the lane we stay in. We're not like a Christian TMZ or something like that.
Nah, we keep it organic.
Yeah, we try to come up with topics that we think are really affecting the church, not just update you and give a perspective. We do that briefly, like we just did right now. Right. But this topic is something that we really care about. And I actually, I was telling you, Strack, when I was doing research for this is a much deeper topic than I thought. So the ideology and evolution of fake news. Let me breathe something to bring you in so that you understand what we're talking about. On Wednesday, January 11th, 2017, President-elect Donald J. Trump had his first press conference, all right? In that press conference, he went after a CNN anchor named Jim Acosta, who was at the time, and I think still is seen as a very esteemed news reporter. Now, some of you are like, you're already in that, oh, that's fake news, CNN, and this and that. Okay, cool, that's fine. But this is just the reality is Jim Acosta wouldn't be in the White House if he didn't have some credentials, all right? So at this press conference, this is Trump's first press conference. At this press conference, he goes after the intelligence communities for saying that, or putting out there that there was collusion between him and Russia. Like that basically Russia had helped him become president. So there was this, I don't know if you guys remember this, what was that report? The FBI dude, who was doing
Mueller
report,
yeah.
right? Waiting for this Mueller report. Right?
That went on for like 2 years, didn't it? Something like that.
Ridiculous. And then it didn't really say that much for real.
Gave up nothing.
They really didn't do nothing for real.
And they built that joint heavy too.
Man, every week it was like, oh, the Mueller report's dropping this Friday. It was like that joint was like Kanye's album. Kanye's dropping on Friday.
They milked that bad boy. They milked it.
So that cow died. Dehydration, sure. Right?
Mad dehydrated.
So this is Wednesday, January 11th. So Trump talks about, so he starts off saying the intelligence communities, FBI, CIA, all of them, NSA, all these communities are fake. He said they were fraudulent to do this and it was wrong for them to bring out this type of material, right? So in the process of talking through that, towards the end of this press conference, Jim Acosta and other people are trying to ask him questions. Well, what if they do bring out some evidence? And he's like, no, they're not going to bring out it. So he's going back and forth. And then there's this exchange between him and head anchor from CNN, Jim Acosta. And Jim's trying to ask him a question. He's like, no, I'm not talking to you. I'm not. And he says, you over there. He says, don't be rude. Don't be rude. No. He says, I'm not talking to you. Your news report is trash. You're fake news. Mm-hmm. You're fake news, right? That was the first time that Trump had really said, and that began a slalom. Okay, if you know anything about skiing, slalom is like going downhill. After Trump said that, everything changed. Everything changed. That term, fake news, took on a life of its own. And let me prove this to you so that you know it's not just that. Let me read this to you. This is from Newsweek on November 2nd, 2017. So this is 10 months later. Newsweek article says this. The phrase fake news has been declared the official Collins Dictionary word of 2017. Collins said use of the term, which is often used by Trump, is up 365% since last year, citing the dictionary company's own monitoring of word output across all forms of media. Okay, so understand what they're saying. They monitor all forms of media, and they saw that the term fake news that's most often used by Trump was up 365%, right? Wow. They say the phrase has been around for a while, but Trump's tendency to dismiss unfavorable reports as fake news and the existence of verifiably false news during the campaign made the term especially influential this year. So that was Newsweek, November 2nd, 2017. All right. Here's Time Magazine, January 8th, almost a year from when he said fake news to Jim Costa. Time Magazine, January 8th, 2018, says this. The American Dialect Society's 2017 word of the year is fake news. Fake news. The society chose the phrase on January 5th, which they defined as disinformation or falsehoods presented as real news and actual news that is claimed to be untrue. So there's twofold definitions. So there's fake news for real, and then there's true news that you're just saying is fake. They give it, which I agree with that definition. Then he said this: it was selected for best representing the public discourse and preoccupations of the past year, according to a release from ADS. The word was also added as an entry on dictionary.com, though the definition only encompasses news stories that are fabricated. All right, so this was a big deal. This was a huge deal when Trump said fake news. And I think Trump is a showman. And I think that those two words took on the life of their own and became the essentially associated with Donald Trump. So, matter of fact, there's another article that I'm not going to read, where he said he basically invented fake news. And he said that he invented fake news. Someone's like, well, it's been used before. But to his credit, he did make it more popular.
Yeah.
So that those two words are an ideology, and we're going to talk about the evolution of it. What's the impact of that, right? What's the impact of that? We're 5 years removed from him starting to say fake news, and then that became almost every press conference after that.
Right.
And there were times it was funny to me. There were times it was funny to me that he said that. But that fake news was what became associated with Trump. But it wasn't just Trump. It had a significant impact on the culture.
Yeah, I mean, you had so many people in the world already thinking that way about media. Mm-hmm. You know, mainstream media per se.
Media, yeah.
CNN with Fox. I mean, you've had experiences where like one time, Flora and I were in DC. We're watching. This is when Brett Kavanaugh hearings and all that was going on, and they were outside of the courthouse and all that. And Trump had gotten off the plane and said some things to the reporter. And when they went back to the newsroom and the person who was working behind the desk went to say what Trump said something completely different than what he said and reported it as what he just said. Flora and I both were like, what? So I think I say that because society as a whole has already kind of been there with media. Mm-hmm. And then when Trump came along and said fake news, this was now the president of the United States, right, the most powerful man, affirming what a lot of us were already feeling and thinking because of, our eyes have been opened in social media.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So
now here's the irony, and we're going to get to this in a second, but I want to say this now. Here's the irony, and we'll explain how all of this morphed into this in just a second. The irony is that people have more confidence in social media rather than established media.
Yeah.
That's the irony. So social media is not fake news.
Right.
But people who got degrees for journalism, they're fake news. It just
that's because a lot of the times the social media quote unquote fake news is delivered to you by people that you know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that automatically it's attributed to their character, who they are.
Yeah. Or it's delivered to you virally by a lot of views, right? So we tend to think
that too.
If a video has 5 million views and it's a TikTok video,
more validity.
Right?
Yeah, and just like mega church pastors, 100%. They got a lot of people, so they got to be doing something right.
Right. Right. So, all right. So here's the thing. Let's start here. Let's start with this reality because as you said, fake news is somewhat real. But let's start with media bias. All right. And I'll be honest. When I hear people say this from the left and the right, from a Ben Shapiro to, that dude's gone from CNN now. I don't remember all these people's names, but they always talk about media bias. Mm-hmm. So let me make a woke statement right now, because anything you say that has anything to do with racism is woke. As a black man in America, I've known that the media is biased since I was a baby. Right? It was clear to me that media was biased. I mean, the same media has made black people seem like that we are the poorest people in the country. And whenever you think of poor, you think of black people, not the millions of white people in Appalachia. In fact,
I was just watching an interview the other day by a prominent pastor, mm-hmm. and he describing a young boy that he considered a good boy. Mm-hmm. He said, well, he was a good boy. He was a fair-haired child. I was like, what? Fair-haired child. I'm like, so you attribute fair hair with goodness. Uh-huh. So what do you attribute with badness?
Right.
What kind of hair?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, what do you know? And this was a white older dude.
Hold on,
It's
Strack.
just
Wait, hold up. They might say you being woke. That's a microaggression. They might come
listen.
after you.
You can call it whatever y'all want. All I know
It's
is
cross-examined. We don't care.
we call it how we see it, man. This
Right.
was I'm not dropping his name on purpose,
Right. But
but
the struggle is real.
it was ridiculous, man.
Yeah.
And this was a very new interview. I mean,
Yeah.
this year, you know what I'm saying?
But shoot,
So,
Joe Biden said, I mean, black kids are just as smart as white kids and poor black kids. Remember that? Just as smart as
I
white
remember
kids.
that nonsense. Yeah,
Right.
he was full of them when he was on the campaign trail.
So listen, media. I mean, if you want to hear how, go get the appendix, Kirk Kennedy, the appendix, 2018 album. I explained to you in that album how media, starting with Birth of a Nation, 1915, D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, gave an impression that was bought and sold throughout the media. So the media has always been biased. So I get offended sometimes when people talk about the leftist, the media is biased. I mean, when has the media not been biased? The media has always been biased. A lot of times what people are saying, and even in Trump at times, the media is not biased towards your perspective because Fox News is media and you don't call them fake news, right?
Right.
So again, media has always been biased, but let's talk about why media is biased. Now we're going to get into some stuff that some of you may know, some of you may not know. Right now in 2022, media, all 90% of all the media content that we get, and by media I mean established media, not social media, established media. 90% of the established media content that we all are exposed to is run by 5 corporations. 5. Okay. These 5 corporations generate $400 billion a year combined.
Which equates what? That equates power.
That's significant power.
Yeah.
Significant power. I mean, what they say, information, right? Repetition is the father of learning. Like wisdom, right? The Bible tells us, like, look, lean not on your own understanding, right? Trust the Lord with all your heart, man. Lean not on your own. Wear wisdom around your neck, like a necklace. Because wisdom, right? Information is significant. That's why Jesus is the Logos, right? He could have been named the Word, like that. We need that information. Information is powerful. It's a powerful tool.
And real quick, the problem with that, with what you're saying, with 5 major corporations owning mainstream media as we know it, the problem with that is media. One of the major reasons media exists, news tellers exist, is to hold accountable those who are in power.
100%. Yes.
So when you have power owning news, who's holding power accountable? That's a major problem.
Right. So that's why you have the Washington Post. Their tagline is "Democracy dies in darkness." Right. I agree with that, and we're going to explain to that why. So there are 5 corporations that own 90% of all U.S. media, and they generate $400 billion a year. Here are the 5. Wow. Here they are: Comcast, Disney, News Corp, AT&T, and a corporation called National Amusements. All right. Now you may be like, well, let me prove to you that they own 90% of all the media. We're going to go through some of the companies they own, not all of them. All right. Here we go. Here's who Comcast owns. Comcast owns NBC, MSNBC, and all things connected to NBC, USA Network, Sci-Fi Channel, Fandango, Universal Pictures, Focus Features, Rotten Tomatoes, Bravo, Oxygen Channel, MLB Network, part of Hulu, NHL Network, and a ton of other media outlets that I'm not going to name right now. That's Comcast.
That's wild.
All right. Here's what Disney owns. And Disney, I'm not going to name all of these. These are just a handful just to show you. Disney owns ABC, Pixar, DreamWorks, ESPN, Lifetime, History Channel, Marvel, Lucasfilms, Touchstones Pictures, Vice, and many others.
That's crazy.
Many others.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what they own. Okay. News Corp, which many of us would never have heard of. Right. Here's who News Corp owns: Fox News, Fox Sports, 20th Century Fox, the motion picture film, FX, GQ, Wall Street Journal, Sky News out of Australia, HarperCollins Publishing, one of the main publishing brokers, publishing houses in the country, the New York Post, National Geographic, and Zondervan.
Oh snap!
They own Zondervan, right?
They own Zondervan.
They
No,
own
that
Zondervan.
explains a lot.
That explains a lot, bro. They own Zondervan. Okay, that's News Corp. All right, AT&T, which they actually, it used to be Time Warner, but there was a AT&T Time Warner merger for like $169 billion about
Wow.
2 or 3 years ago. So now AT&T has jumped in to be one of the five. All right, here's who AT&T owns: CNN, HBO, Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers, DC Comics, DC stuff, TBS, True TV, Cinemax, TNT, Adult Swim, part of Hulu, Time Magazine, and Rocksteady Games. All right, so these are just some of the things that AT&T owns. And then you have the corporation National Amusements. They own CBS, Paramount Pictures, Nickelodeon, MTV, BET, GameSpot, VH1, Comedy Central, Spike TV, Smithsonian Channel, Showtime, CNET, and Viacom. All right? And Viacom used to be a huge,
Yeah, I remember that.
huge joint. Yeah. Yep, Kira, yep. News Corp is Richard Murdoch. That is exactly right. Richard Murdoch. So these five companies control 90% of the media that we get. Now, mind you, we named more flagship TV stations. We didn't even talk about that they own local news.
Right.
So your local news, wherever you are in this country, is owned probably by one of these five.
They're all affiliates.
They're
Yeah,
all affiliates,
yeah.
right? There's a couple that are owned by a billionaire or two here and there, but most of our media content is by these five corporations. Now, the reason why this is not a monopoly, right? This is not against the law, is because a monopoly is when one company has controlled the market in such a way that no other companies can thrive. So this isn't a monopoly; it's more an oligopoly, right? It's more that, right? It's an oligopoly. So that means it's complete control across a handful of powerful groups. All right. So how did this happen? Now let me say this. In 1986, there were 50 different corporations that owned all the media, right? 50 different. So it was much bigger in 1986. By 2000, it was just six, pretty much the ones we listed. Viacom was one of them, and then Viacom got swept in to National Amusements. So in 14 years, it went from 50 national corporations controlling the media down to these five. So what happened? Crazy, right? That's crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Like you talk about, if you own a company and you got 50 employees, and then 14 years later you're down to five, that's insane, bro. That's insane. So what happened? Well, in 1996, Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act, and what it was supposed to do was deregulate the broadcast and telecommunications corporations so that a lot of people could publish TV shows and media without being controlled by these big corporations. But it actually backfired. So the bill, that was its intention, but the outcome was essentially these major corporations buying these smaller businesses and incorporating them and buying different channels, buying different companies. I don't know when I remember BET was owned by Bob Johnson in like 1982. He was the first black billionaire, or the first contemporary black billionaire that we knew of. And then eventually BET, that was his own thing. He wasn't owned by anybody. And then BET now, they fall under National Amusements, right? So the goal is to buy out these other companies and then put them into your umbrella and just grow your revenue. So in 1986, 50 companies. By 2000, there were only six. And now these six companies, which now is five, control all of the content. So when you say fake news or media is biased, 100%, because only five corporations control all the media that we see. So if they decided, hey, we want all of our networks to push this narrative, they could easily do that.
I mean, that's why you have those snippets of all the newscasters saying the exact same thing.
I had that
You
on the
know,
album. Remember that?
right?
I had
Yeah,
that on the album at the end on the appendix. I had that at one of the
right.
songs
Yeah,
because it's to show you that like it's all they all work together and different. They was all over the country saying the exact same phrase. So on one level, yes, media is biased. Why is media biased? Because it's about we live in a capitalistic country where people are making money. This is about shareholders. This is about ratings. Ratings get people to buy. So and that's the thing. And this is one of the things I want to say. I understand why people say stuff like this. A lot of people will say this on Facebook a lot, especially those who are more on the conservative side. They'll say stuff like this. Yeah, every 2 years the media tries to give you a racial narrative, right? So, like, we have some friends that will say this all the time. They try to. It's going to be another George Floyd or something because they want to drive, get people offended so that they vote Democrat or whatever. It's a leftist media stuff, right? Here's the thing though. That I'm sure there's some truth to that, no question, because these corporations they all have political leanings. I'm sure. Here's the reality though. Here's the reality. These companies care more about money, right?
yep.
So when you like, I remember when Vodi Bakum in his book Fault Lines, he mentioned that to prove his point that the media was racist or leftist leaning, he brought up a white guy named Tony Temple who was essentially murdered in the same way George Floyd was. He was actually handcuffed with a cop on his back longer, and he said in Vodi's book, he said that media didn't cover it. That wasn't true. Washington Post covered it, CNN covered it, but it didn't blow up like George Floyd did. And the conclusion is that it's because they're trying to control the leftist. It's a leftist agenda. They want you to think that the police are killing black people and not white people.
Right.
Here's the problem with that analysis. And for you Vodi Bakum fans, this may trigger you. Here's a problem with that analysis. Media can't control what we believe. Media can only give us what they think we'll like. Here's the reality. In America, there's no history where white police kill white men that is impressive. That is, let's watch this. It just doesn't happen. The only time two white people will garner that much news is if a Jew kills a German or so forth. I've said this to you before, Strack. If there was a heavyweight, I haven't watched a heavyweight boxing match in a long time. I lost my taste for it. I missed the days of Tyson and all them dudes. But if there was a heavyweight boxing match between a German and a Jewish dude, I would 100% watch that. Why? Because there's so much history between those two people groups. So it would almost feel like the Holocaust. I bet you people would even call it the Holocaust championship fight, right? Because of that. Well, in America,
That would be crazy if they did call it that.
but
That would
people
be
would
wild.
though. I'm not saying that they would call it that, but it would. You know how
Yeah,
people are. They'd be like the
for
Holocaust.
sure.
It would draw attention to that. It would almost be like, and the Jewish dude would probably feel like he needs to
Yeah, I mean,
win.
Rocky played off of it with the Russian. You know what I'm saying? It
100%.
was during the Cold War. They played
One
off
hundred
of that.
percent, right?
Yeah.
With Drago, right? So everything
Yeah.
I'm saying, so we've seen that already in media. Here's the reality, right? The history between black and white people, in particular, black law enforcement and white law enforcement and black people, it's the most. It has such a history, right? It is the Lakers versus Celtics of race relations in our country. Sure, there are other people groups like Koreans and Chinese don't get along and this and that, but that's not what there's a legacy. So when that happens, because if you notice, you don't see a lot of black cops that killed black people. You don't see that, but the media, they don't do it just because they're trying to create a racial narrative. They do it because that's going to sell. That's what people are going to want to know about. And that's what you can tell by the headlines. White officer kills unarmed black man. That's intentional. So you can call it a leftist narrative if you want to, but it's a capitalistic narrative. Listen, if old people, if men walking old women across the street was something that people love for, we'd see that all the time on the news.
For sure.
They're
For
trying
sure.
to make money. And as much as you want to
Well, I
say
mean,
it,
what you're talking about right now sounds real similar to 2 Timothy 4.
100%.
It's people drawing teachers unto themselves to scratch their itching ears.
100%, bro.
That's what it sounds like.
And it is. It's a derivative of that. And I think it's disingenuous to just see it through a political lens, which we'll get to later on. Because really what it is like media can't make you and I believe anything.
Right.
They can't make, like, commercials don't make you buy whatever they're advertising. What makes you buy it is your own desire, right?
Right.
We want to see the conflict between white and black people. We want to see, we're not drawn to, these little kids in the neighborhood raise enough money to buy this. We don't care about that. Tune in news, man kills. That's what we're drawn to, right? This is serial killer smiling pictures. We're drawn to violence. We're drawn to conflict.
Shock.
We're drawn to shock, aggression.
Yeah.
So you can blame it on a leftist leaning media if you want to, but that's disingenuous. That's the culture that we live in, and it's really the media is giving us what we think. We're not as controlled as we think. They're giving us what they want. So when we're talking about media being biased, 1,000% it is. Of course it is. If you think it's just biased because of a political leaning, then I think you're being deceived by your own favorite theologian. It is deeper than that. It is a capitalistic endeavor, and that's what's happening. And they want ratings, they want all of it, they do that, right? So media is biased 100%, and because of that, there is fake news. There's fake news, and so Trump was right, and other people up to this point have been right. All right? Let's talk about the second reason why this is happening.
Before we do, though, I do want to push back just a little bit because I think it helps. You're talking about people who own multiple corporations. They got like endless amounts of money. You know what I'm saying? So yes, I think you're right when it comes to ratings. They want to keep ratings through the roof. That's what keeps them on TV. That's why they hate Joe. That's why they hate Joe Rogan right now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But when you think about money being, or monetary means being, the main influence, pitted against political influences or political agendas, I think the political agenda kind of gets thrown right in with it, because when you get that much money, how much money does money mean to you? You know, like how much more does money mean to you, really? Yeah. So now all of a sudden it's more of the power structure. How do you maintain power, and what systems do you put in place to maintain that power so that you stay in power? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then that's where the political things come into play.
Yes.
But it's really about maintaining power and staying at the top.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I would agree. My perspective is that when people are saying it's just a leftist agenda, I disagree with that.
Right.
Sure,
that's the easy way to identify enemy. That's why.
Right.
It's easy. It's an easy identifier.
Yeah. That's true. I agree with that. So the other reason why fake news becomes viable, so you got this reality. Media is biased because, and it's fake news at times because only 5 corporations own it. I mean, $400 billion, bro. That is more than some countries' GDP, bro.
Man, that's a lot of money, man.
$400 billion annually.
Yeah.
I think it's what is it? Let me make sure my numbers are right. I know it's 400 billion, but is it? Yeah, annually. Could $400 billion control? That's insane.
Within our lifetimes, we got to the point where people are becoming billionaires.
Yeah.
So when you talk about it took that long to get people to become billionaires, and now we talking about 400 billion.
400 billion annually, though.
That's a lot of money. I mean, that's ridiculous. We hear billions, but we don't realize billions is like hundreds of millions,
right?
Thousands of millions
times each other, right?
Yeah, like hundreds, thousands of millions.
I mean, let's put it in perspective. There are, at the most, right now, there are 7.5 billion people on the earth. Right. At the most, right? So $400 billion. If there's 7 billion people on earth, and you have $400 billion. That means you can give every single person $5 on earth. Every person $5 and still have a few billion left. Because that would only be. Wait.
You said how many people are in the world?
If there's 7 billion people in the world, right?
Right.
And you have $400 billion.
Right.
So 7 times 5 is 35, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can give, is it a nickel or is it $5? Let me make sure. Hold on.
I mean, if you got If you got 400, you got $400 billion,
right,
and you got 7 billion people in the world, you can give them a lot more than $5 each.
I know, but I'm saying if you gave them all $5, right? That's 35. That's 300. That's what 350 billion. Fam, that's still it's still a lot. That's what I'm saying. That's how much money is out there. It's just crazy. This is annual. This is annual.
We're not mathematicians, by the way. In case you was trying to
we know we're talking. But there was someone who made a stupid joke about that guy who was running for president, Bloomberg. Someone they messed it up, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be that person. They said he could give everyone $1,000 and still have money. It was like, no, actually, you're wrong. So I'm just trying to make sure my math.
Yeah, this is like a Joe Biden joint right here.
Exactly. What do you think is these people?
A gaffe. That's what they call it. A gaffe.
It's ridiculous. All right. So another reason why fake news is legitimate and why that happens is because of the reality of established media versus social media. This is what we talked about before. And this is where I think a lot of people wouldn't know about this. And this is what surprised me the most in researching for this episode was the reality of local news media. So let me read you a couple things so you understand what's going on. So local news started to really lose money in the late 1990s. So your local newspaper, so wherever you live. So for me, it might be the Washington Post or the Bowie. I live in the Bowie Gazette or, local newspapers. Well, as the country was changing, and as things got more technological, people were less drawn to the local news, right? So you'd watch, I didn't do this growing up, but you might watch the news at 5 p.m. and then the news would come on at 11 p.m., and you'd watch what was happening in your city. And then you had newspapers that would come and fill you in. And then, you had major newspapers like the Washington Post or whatever city you're from. But then you might have sections where it covers the local news. Like in the Washington Post, we had like the metro section where you just hear about what's happening in local neighborhoods in DC and all that stuff, right? So that would happen. And so over the years, though, in the late 90s, a lot of local newspapers across the country started closing because they weren't able to generate interest and income. Now, this happened mainly because a lot of newspapers, as a matter of fact, the bread and butter of newspapers is twofold. It's print advertising, right? So you open your newspaper and you see a big advertising ad for Toyota cars right there. And you get coupons, you clip those out, and then you would keep those, and that's what you would do in the
jobs, housing,
all of
obituaries,
it, right? All of it's all there, right? So you had that. That's the lifeline but that was failing. And there are three reasons why that was starting to fail. The first reason was a tech entrepreneur in San Francisco named Craig Newmark. He started an email newsletter in the 1990s and would send this around. And then as a website started to develop in the 90s and then the early 2000s, he created a website and basically took what he did with newsletters in San Francisco and made it a website. And as websites got popular, people started to use that website. Well, in 2006, Forbes listed that website as the 7th highest site with the most views. Craig Newmark would be known to us as Craigslist.
Right.
So Craigslist started, and that now you could post all this stuff. So instead of having to pay for advertising in your local newspaper, you could just post it on Craigslist. Right. And people would just get it, and it would be a free transaction. You get your money, there's nothing to it. And he was able to monetize that through other means. So Craigslist became a significant blow to like local newspapers and local media. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but what happens is if you don't get information about your location, your local media, then you have to rely on what for information? Established media or social media, right? Mm-hmm. So then you got 2008. We had that big recession, right? That all them people buying them houses and they were defaulting on loans. And there was a huge recession in 2008. And print advertising for a lot of newspapers essentially dried up. It just dried up. They weren't able to. And then so there's two things for local news. It's print advertising and then circulation. So these two things are starting to drive. Go ahead.
You know what I thought about when I was reading up on this news? Like, when's the last time you watched the local news to find out what's going on? It's rare. You know what I'm
Rare,
saying?
bro.
Like, I
You
can
watch it for
think of
sports and weather, right?
right. I mean, and even that, I go on YouTube for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I watch my highlights on YouTube. But anyway, I can think of two, I think, scenarios where the local news was still very prominent. One was 9/11.
Yes.
Local news. I mean, I
Yes.
remember turning on my local news. I needed to know what was going on. The other would have been the inauguration of Barack Obama. Uh,
Yeah.
those are the two that I can remember. So you're going back to 2008 for local news. And I don't mean
Right.
sitting in my lunchroom at work watching the news. That's not what I'm talking about. But actually, me intending to get information, I click on to watch my local news. That's been a long time since we've
Right.
done that. You know what I
Bro, we just
mean?
don't. I can't even.
We
I'm
just
not even
don't.
home at 5 p.m. to watch the like evening news. I mean, at
Right.
11 p.m. I'm not watching the evening news, right?
Right.
So all of that is changing now. You have to understand the impact of that. If local news, which is dying across the country, over 2,000, there are 2,000 counties in America that do not have a newspaper anymore.
That's wild. That's
That's
wild.
crazy, bro.
Yeah, that's
So
wild.
they don't get any local politics. They don't get what's happening in their area. So they just so what do you get your information from? Well, you get it from social media. Because in
Right.
2008 you saw the rise of, so you had MySpace, which was more of a musical thing that came in the early 2000s,
It was a promotional thing.
promotional thing, right? But then you get to uh, Twitter and Facebook. Facebook moves from college based to a public platform. So
Right.
now you're able to talk with people across the country. You know, forget the AOL chat rooms and stuff. Now you can post pictures and
I
all that
mean,
stuff.
the social media is the public square now.
Yeah, it's a
It has
public square.
become the public
It's
square.
a public square, and that's a gift and a curse
Right.
because most of the media that you get, like you ever scroll on your Facebook feed or your Twitter, and you'll see people have articles linked. When you click on, and I get this because I have mine is on Substack, so I get it, and I think I have things to say, so I'm not knocking it, but the reality is I'm an op-ed. Everything
Mhm.
I say is my opinion.
For sure.
Even
Yeah.
if I do real work to find out and make sure I understand what I'm talking about, but a lot of us are giving an opinion. 95% of the articles that I click on are not established journalists who actually know how to do reporting and investigative reporting, all of it. This is the interesting thing about the Julie Roy's John MacArthur kind of fiasco, right? Because she is a genuine investigative reporter. Now, you can disagree with her conclusions. You can
Right.
think that she has it in for John MacArthur. You can think all you want, but she's not. These aren't op-eds, though. She
Nah.
has a real degree in this and knows what she's doing. And whether you like her conclusions or not, that's on you. But I respect real journalists. We had John Ward on a few episodes ago, who's a distinguished journalist, and so he was talking a little bit about this. It's a real thing, but a lot of what we get from social media, again, as you alluded to, there are trust that we have of people. We trust certain people. We trust their perspective. And I get that. People trust us. I get that. So I try to be faithful to make sure when I write something, I explain why I think this way, and I
Right.
try to connect it to scripture as best as I can when I do that. But the reality is that's where we get most of our media from. So you got
For sure.
the 2008 recession killed the budget, and the lack of circulation killed local news. Thousands of counties do not have any local news. And
That's
then
wild.
third, you get hedge funds, the harvesting strategy, which is essentially to get a group of investors to buy out local news and incorporate it into bigger media assets, which we alluded to earlier. So this has created what they call news deserts, which are thousands of areas that have no local news, no news whatsoever, none. And so what this does is it makes you trust op-eds. You
Yeah.
will take someone's perspective and treat it as if it's groundbreaking journalistic news, and often it's just a good perspective at best. It's good
Especially
perspective.
if it's a hunch you have. You
Right,
know, if it's aligned with what you're already feeling or thinking.
100%. The reason why this happened, and with a lot of people, I was surprised that this didn't come up a lot. It was the rise of cell phones. When it was cell phones changed everything
Smartphone.
because, yeah, smartphone, because it became the portable connection to the world. So when Apple came out in '08, I believe, with their 3G, I was at 3G. I got my first iPhone in '09, which was the 3GS. That was my first joint, my first iPhone. That phone, along with like Blueberries, it came out. I remember I had the big Blueberry. I remember it was cool. I had a screen on it. I could get emails. It was just cool to have that phone. I remember when I
You
was
talking about the silver joint with the blue screen?
well, I had a blue one. I had a navy blue one joint,
Okay.
but I loved it because it was I could see my emails. I could do
Yeah.
a little bit of web searching. Like it was just cool. And then when obviously when iPhone came out, it was a game changer. But
Right.
now you have at your fingertips access to portable media,
I
and
mean,
so
not just access, but I think our main source of information for life, period.
mhm,
When you think about your phone, you even hear from God through your
mhm,
phone. You know what I'm
100%.
saying? Like you
Uh,
read the Bible on your phone.
yeah,
You
I
know what I'm
do.
saying?
Do a ton.
Everything, every information you need comes through your phone for the
Yeah,
most part. Especially when you consider lockdowns and everything the way that we've communicated for the last couple of years.
yeah,
Your phone is your source of life.
yeah.
It's wild, B. I mean,
Like you
that's
lose
just
your
the
phone, you
reality.
feel like you've lost everything. Like you're just
Everything. You
yeah,
immediately going to go get another phone so you can be
right.
connected. Like there's no questions about it.
Bro, which is interesting because this is a different conversation right now. But Russia is talking about um, they have basically what people are reporting is that Russia is going to try to do an EMP war against the United States, a
Yeah,
hacking war that will take out a lot of our ability to communicate through
that's the
cyber
best way
attacks.
to take out our infrastructure. I mean,
100%.
it's no longer industry. We're now cyber.
Yeah,
I mean, we're cyber.
that's a whole different ballgame.
Yep.
But this is what we have. So you have this happening. Local media, news media is gone. And so now you basically have, I believe, what the five corporations are saying, I believe what my friends are saying, and an occasional thing that I may read. I may still read New York Times or still read some professional journalism through their website. I may subscribe because, they make you subscribe. They'll let you read a couple of articles for free, but you're going to get that pop up eventually, right? That says, all right, you've read enough free articles. Put a couple of bread up, put some bread up, right?
Yep.
So all of this is shaping, this is all happening prior to Trump. All this is happening. So it's not just the distrust of media, but it's the dismantling of local media. Like you just don't have any more use for it because now, as we said, you have your phone, you have these social media apps, and you're connected. You're like the thing
Which
about
is,
what made.
I
Go
was
ahead, go
just
ahead.
gonna say, it's interesting when you said that, when you just said that, it triggered something for me because when you think about local media, it has the word local attached, which means that a lot of the people who work for this company, this industry, or this whatever you call it, the news source, will be local.
Yeah,
So they'll be invested in the community they're delivering the news to, which
100%, bro.
means they'll be less likely to want to lie. You know what I'm saying? To want to
Yeah,
deceive and to mislead people.
right.
They should care a little bit more.
They do. They typically do
You know what I'm saying?
because you can fact check what they're doing because it's in your area.
And you might see them at the grocery store.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Be like, yo, what was you saying? Like, is
Yeah. Right.
that you know what I mean?
Yeah. You be lying about the weather, fam. You keep saying
Right.
right. You had me wearing a heavy coat last week, and it
Yo.
was 90 degrees.
Yeah,
So
keep my weather out your mouth.
I keep my right exactly. So again, but what you have is the loss of local media, the trust in mainstream or social media, and then you have social media and established media rivaling each other because you have like stuff like Twitter had Periscope or whatever. You can video to like the George Floyd story. One of the things that was so amazing to me was that like Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, those stories didn't break because of national media. They were viral videos that got uploaded from someone's cell phone. Ahmaud Arbery, the dude was driving behind the truck when they killed him
With his phone.
with his phone. Someone was filming the different interactions. Some of it was the camera phone, the phone, the camera from the store. But the
Yeah.
main stuff that we saw, that him dying, was someone's cell phone watching it. A lot of the things that we've seen that have gone viral, so this is what you'll hear. Mainstream media isn't setting these things up. They're not biased in that sense, but they see these videos going viral, and so you'll hear this literally, uh, breaking. We're the first to cover this story. They'll try to give themselves credit for being the first
For
to
sure.
cover something, because they want to make sure that you're drawn to them. They got to get the rating. So everyone's going
Well,
to show the same video, but what spin can they put on it?
I mean, and society has always looked at the first one to deliver the news as
Yeah,
important.
right.
It's you're the important person. I mean, that's
Yeah,
why that one dude came to David. It was like, yo, look at, I got this stuff. Saul's dead. Like, you know what I'm
right,
saying? What's good? And Mama
right.
David was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
You bringing me this news thinking you're going to get something good for this?
You killed him? Oh, really?
Off with his head. You
Right?
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. First one smelt it, dealt it. And it's not always a good thing, bro.
It's not always a good thing to be the first, man. But
So all this is happening. So now we get to, Trump, January 11th, 2017, Jim Acosta, you're fake news. This becomes an ideology, partly because, yes, I think people are starting with the advent of like YouTube and you're starting to get these sort of conspiracy theory type documentaries where people are talking about zeitgeist and showing you all these different things. And so there's a greater, because we have access to these things, the greater ability, the strength in numbers, right? The more people see this stuff and agree with it, they form communities based around these things. So it was one thing to distrust media, but what it was the rise of conspiracy theories and the knowledge that while media is being controlled by a small group of people, the corporations are large in terms of their scope, but it's really narrow. It's only they can control what these people say if they want to. They can make everyone, so if they want to lean this way, lean that way, they can do it, right? And they got the money to do it. So this is happening. So when Trump says this, he's right that there was fake news. There were definitely news sources that were after Donald Trump. And I think a lot of it was, I honestly think that a lot of the reason why they were angry at Trump, because they were going after Trump, he hadn't even been in office yet. I
nah, they
remember,
was hunting for that dude from day one the minute
bro,
he said he was doing anything.
what? I remember Dave Chappelle doing Saturday Night Live, and I think he shocked a lot of people where he said, man, give him a chance. Like he hadn't even done it. He got in office and hadn't done it. And he came in offended because people were already trying to get him impeached. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. And again, I don't always pay attention to politics, and I've played much more attention in the last 20 years. But I don't ever remember a president getting in and the media, a particular swaths of the media, trying to impeach him on day one, just hoping he messes up.
Oh yeah,
Hoping.
they was trying from day one, man.
And
From
let
the
me see,
beginning.
let me say the reason why I think this happened is because a lot of them just didn't believe that the Donald was going to win,
Yeah.
especially when that video came out with him talking about how he touches women
Mm-hmm.
with that reporter from that CBS show. I forgot the name of the show. Billy something. I forgot his name. I should have remembered the research. In the research, I forgot his name. Billy Bush. Billy Bush and Trump. They were in it. He was interviewing him, and they were in a trailer. And
That's
they
an
thought,
interesting name considering what you're saying right now.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I forgot his wife got drugged to the mud. I think. Right. I think his name was Billy Bush. I could be wrong, but if I'm wrong, it wasn't pun intended. It was just I'm trying to really remember. But Trump made this very vulgar remark about touching women's private parts,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone thought it's a wrap. This dude is the worst. The Republican Party was distancing themselves from Trump. Hillary Clinton, I don't know if you remember, but the next political debate after that, she was just all just acting like it's a wrap. It's a wrap. He's
Yeah.
losing, and he won. And
Yeah.
I think he. I watched this interview between Jon Stewart and Margaret Sullivan, who said this. She said that the media is terrible at predictions and terrible at speculation. And then Jon Stewart said they're also terrible at accountability, though.
Hmm.
But she said that she was the editor of the Washington Post for some years, and editor in the Buffalo's biggest newspaper, which was like the sixth largest newspaper in the country at one point when she was the
Wow.
editor. She said terrible at speculation and stuff like that. So the media really thought there's no way he's going to win. Everyone thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and then he lost. She lost. He won. So he comes in with a chip on his shoulder, and he starts talking about fake news. And I think people were so offended that they predicted it wrong that they were going after this dude right away, right at the beginning. So he says fake news to Jim Acosta, and then it becomes a mantra for what he's doing. So the ideology of fake news from Trump's perspective was, you're saying negative things about me that are not true, right?
Yeah.
They're not true. That's Trump's whole thing. His ideology is, these are news. The intelligence community and the media, or this portion of the media, you're fake news. I don't trust you.
And I
Right?
think because they were so hell bent on getting him impeached and all of that, that there was a lot of things that were reported that were fake, that
fake.
weren't true.
100%.
So he had some, reason to say it, and that gave him validity when he yelled it, even about things that weren't true. You know what I'm saying? Because
100.
it's the boy who cried wolf thing. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Like in reverse.
No. And what it did was, it set in motion really a sense that basically no one can be trusted who reports news that from Trump, that target Trump, his policies, or his people.
Pretty much.
So
yeah.
because there was some truth to that, the fake news evolved into, anything that is negative about me is fake news. I dismiss it. And there was a lot of stuff about Trump. And so and in this sense, here's what's ironic is, in this sense, the fake news term became sort of like Revelation 12:7, right? The accuser of the brethren. It almost became this, like Satan is the accuser of the brethren, right? It became this socio-political, it was basically saying, you all are the accuser of the brethren in socio-political jargon. This is where it evolves to now the people. And by this point, I think Trump was probably the most polarizing president for this reason. He wasn't a politician, right? So he came in, and this is what people like.
And that was obvious from the gate.
From the gate. He wasn't a politician, right? Ironically, Trump had like a college that was fake news. He promised all these people who paid money for these degrees, and they were just, and he got sued in court by all these people. So Trump started fake news, but was also in his own right the epitome of fake news in times, right? But because of that, let me tell you the impact of it happening to the country, right? So there was listen to this. This is the significance of fake news, all right? In the last election, listen to this. In the final 3 months of the U.S. presidential campaign, the top performing fake election news stories on Facebook generated more engagement than the top stories from major news outlets, such as the New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post, NBC News, and BuzzFeed, and a few others, right? So the top stories that were news stories 3 months prior, leading up to the election, were fake news stories. They were fake news. So one of the things that happened was, there was not only an expose of fake news, but then because we live in the society of trolling, there were people who were creating fake news for viral. It was viral vitality, right? It was like, I want to go viral. And so how can you go viral? By coming up with fake news stories.
It's great. It's crazy because any of us, I mean, if we have somebody who lies to us, that's an automatic dash. Like, okay, this is strike one.
Right.
You lie again, it's like, all right, strike two. Lie again, it's like, all right, fam, I'm not gonna believe anything you say to me.
We don't believe you. You need more people.
You know what I'm saying? But do we do that with media? You know what I'm saying? Like that, I think that plays in though, because for people who do function that way, who do think that way, when they've been lied to by, let's say, for example, myself with my church history, right? When I've had preachers stand up there and lie and be sneaky with the word, now all of a sudden I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't. But my attachment to the truth was what maintained me still serving the Lord and still going to church. Right. My attachment to the truth. You know what I'm saying? Right, so when we look at these media sources, there's not an objective standard that they're held to because it's the world. You know what I mean? We know how to function in the world. But man, we got to be careful not to just write off everything. At least myself, I'm guilty of doing that because I felt lied to. So I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm not getting lied to no more. You can bump y'all. You know, I'll listen to other people and I'll search around and see what's good for me. So that happens.
Your heart gets hard, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Your heart gets hard. And it just becomes, I'm not going for it. I'm not going for it anymore. And I think that caused, and that's what I mean. Like, it caused a lot of damage. So, and think about who we are as believers. We're people who we stand by and live for the truth.
Right.
Like, we are people who, out of everyone else in the world, like, we are people who are for truth.
Right.
When Jesus said, the truth will set you free, he wasn't talking about the political truth. He was talking about the truth of who he is. So
Right.
as believers, this is what we live for. We stand by.
That's
Well,
why it
part
said,
of
"He who remains in my word shall be my disciple, and he
100,
shall
right?
know the truth." Yeah.
100. And so what you get is, and here's where it becomes really dangerous, because now we're living in this culture with a lot of the fake news ideology. And let's just be honest, because everything got condensed into political. I mean, Trump was the one who, so if you agree with Trump, then people slander you, gossip. If you don't agree with Trump, then it's fake news. So it didn't just stay from Trump and the people who support him. Fake news became the way all of us just see pretty much everything,
That's
and
fact.
and really everything that we don't agree with. So it can
Mm.
be fake news about not even just like political, it can be just character. Like, some of us just don't agree with what Julie Roy said about John MacArthur. Some of us don't agree with, and it could be true to the bone gristle, but it's been fake news. I mean, that
Mm.
I go back, and I can't prove this, right? What I'm about to say, I can't prove this. But I go to like a Ravi Zacharias, right? And I wonder how many times did people hear things but just thought, no, that's fake news. I don't believe that.
Mm.
I don't have an investigative, journalistic perspective, which biblically is discernment, right? I lack discernment because I lean towards a particular perspective, and those who are in that perspective are fake news. And this is why we've said this before. Why we've tried to stay balanced is because when you choose a side, then you can't critique that side. You're not allowed. Like, it's like, what are you doing? How are you? You've been listening to too much Candace Owens. If you say, nah, I think black people, there's some stuff we need to atone for. Like, we need this some stuff that's real in our communities that have nothing to do with white supremacy. You've been listening to too much of them folks. Or if you're on the conservative side, I said, no. I mean, I think black people have the right, laws have been passed, and but I do think racism is still affecting them. Oh, you've been reading too much Ibn Kendi, right? It's fake news. It's all fake news. It's the accuser of the brethren. This is what I think Trump brought in to the church. Was it's just, we don't trust the other side. We don't trust them on a theological level.
Right. And if you don't trust any of them because it's all fake news, then who are you gonna go with? You're gonna go with the ones that appeal to you the
One hundred
most.
percent.
You're gonna be like, okay, it's all fake. Then I kind of know this person a little bit, so I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
trust them.
Trust them.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so it all just comes down to a subjective standard.
It is 100%. And I mean, it just the right, and when you think about, and I'm gonna prove this. Let me prove this in two ways. Let me prove what we're saying in two ways. First, let's look at the data to prove this. Right, here's the data on fake news. Right, during the months before the campaign, the top 20 performing false election stories from hoax sites and hyper partisan blogs generated 8,711,000 shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook.
Hmm.
These are all fake joints. Generated 8,711,000 shares over. Okay. In that same time period, the 20 best performing election stories from 19 major news websites generated a total of 7,367,000 shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. So fake news got almost 2 million more reactions and responses and shares and stuff than actual news, right? So there was this rise of like, let's try to go viral, because in local media or mainstream media, they're not going viral. They're telling you what stories you can do. So it's almost like we're taking back, like, in the same way MySpace. This is a different conversation, but let me say this: what MySpace did, people blame Napster and that get for giving out MP3s as a destruction of the music industry. I don't think that's what happened. That was part of it. But what happened, I think, was MySpace. When MySpace came out, it was the first time that artists felt like, I'm in control of my destiny. I don't got to send my stuff to a record label and just hope that someone calls me back and says they want to sign me, right? I can't go to Jack the Rapper if you're a rap artist, or to this event that these guys are holding to try to get signed, like Wu-Tang Clan did, bum
Right.
rushing. I can't do that. So now I have a MySpace page. I don't care about buying other people's music. Now I can put my music out there and want people to buy me. I think MySpace, along with Napster, but I think MySpace is woefully overlooked for people wanting their music to be heard instead of buying everyone else's music. It was like the first time where you could
Yeah, I
put your
mean,
stuff out there.
MySpace headed up SoundCloud.
Right.
SoundCloud.
100%.
That's how many artists do we know came from SoundCloud?
Came from SoundCloud, right? In the same way that MySpace did that, our phones and blogs and Facebook, they did that with news. It's like, you know what? I can put my own stuff out there. I want my ideas out there. Doesn't
Right.
matter if I know what I'm talking about. This is how I feel. I'm going to put my ideas out there and I'm going to try to go viral. When YouTube came out and you had that chocolate rain, that
Yeah.
weird looking dude who had that, and he wasn't monetizing that, right? But that thing had like 1 billion views, I think, at this point, that chocolate rain song, right? There was the first time we're like, wow, we can actually become famous. We can be
Right.
known. We can be heard. My perspective can be accepted without having to go to school for journalism, without having to be on the grind and be a good rapper, without having to do the work and the discipline of these things. I can just share things like TikTok. I can be an attractive girl, dance on videos, and have hundreds of millions of followers, right? Without any real talent, without any. So this all becomes a part of it. So it wasn't just a distrust of fake news. It was the desire to have my own perspective on the news to be heard. And so you see the blow up of blog like WordPress and different Blogspot, and all these different kind of platforms that you draw people to what you think and how you think, who you are, instead of other people. And you want that market share. So you're going to find stories or say things. Some people, not all people do this. I don't think we do this, but I think you find stories that are outrageous or make up things that will draw what we now call clickbait, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things that happened, and viral vitality. This destroyed our ability to discern true and false when it comes to that. And as believers, we're supposed to be true, but we also, many of us, not all of us, have fallen victim to what Strack and I have been calling for 2 years the theological gospel, and evaluating things through a political lens. Let me explain to you. Let me give you proof of that. Now, here's proof of this. Many of us will hear people like Ali Stuckey does this a lot. She has a very big platform, conservative, evangelical woman. She has a big platform on YouTube
Blaze.
and Blaze, all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's one of the people that does this a lot. She'll say stuff like this. We have to, I'm not going to fall for these leftist policies. We have to push back against left policies and so forth. So LGBT is a left policy. Anything that's woke that has to do with social justice is a leftist policy. And she talks like that. Ben Shapiro talks like that. Then you got people who are on the Democrat side who will talk about right-wing policies, right? Believers who talk about these things. The taxation of the middle class and the lower class, but not the rich, is right-wing. They'll say all these things, right? And they're true in one sense. But here's the problem. When I talk about these things as left policies, if the problem is political, then the solution becomes political. So how do you repent of believing a left policy? How do you repent of that? How do you repent of white privilege, virtue signaling, gaslighting? How do you repent of leftist policies? How do you repent of white privilege, far right wing policies? How do you repent of that? See, when you diagnose the problem politically like that, then the solution is political. So what is repentance, Ali Stuckey? It's right wing, vote conservative? That's the you don't even use biblical language. All these people with all these platforms that are so conservative or so liberal, so near the Lord, you don't even describe the problems biblically. LGBT are not left-wing policies. If it's evil, then it's satanic.
Right.
It's satanic. Abortion is not a leftist policy. It's satanic. So again, you have, so even us, we're so theological, and we buy into, and fake news becomes theological for us, not theological. So we don't even use, so all this, we don't even use the descriptions. These people don't even use the actual language from the Bible so that we can even call people to repentance, call
You
people
know
to do
what?
something.
It's interesting the way you're saying that, and it really hits home because when you think about um, when people want to like identify, man, you're talking about Christians examining the world, and we're allowing the world to give us the information of the examination, basically.
100%. 100%.
Like, but how can we not go to Scripture to give a diagnosis
Right.
of these things, of all of these things? If we're not going to Scripture to give a diagnosis, then we are being what you're saying. We're just like the world. The Bible says, "Don't be conformed to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your
Knowing.
mind." A lot of people think that just means, well, don't drink alcohol, smoke weed, watch movies, rap, but don't have sex, don't out of marriage. A lot of people go to the things that we've uplifted as a society as the biggest sins.
Right.
But what about your political perspectives? What about the way you're viewing your neighbor who looks at taxes differently than you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing that from a worldly perspective, or are you doing that from a
Mm.
biblical perspective?
Truth.
That's where we're at.
Mm.
That's where we're at. That's what we're discussing right now.
And let me tell you why this is dangerous for the believer. The impact of fake news on us, as we're talking now about seeing things through a theological lens. And by we just mean theopolitical, right?
Right.
Theological. It's not theological. Let me tell you, the proof of this is this. When you see things through a theological lens and it's all about leftist policies or rightist policies, they become causes, right? But they're
Mm-hmm.
not convictions.
Mm-hmm.
And let me give you an example. If you say, I hate abortion, right? I vote Republican because of abortion, because that's a leftist policy, right? I hate abortion. Okay. If it's a cause, then you're going to vote Republican and you're going to be pushing back against those who are on the opposite side of the cause, right? If it's a conviction, a biblical conviction, well, loving an unborn child is just an expression of loving your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's an unborn child, then you actually also love the mother who makes a decision to have
That's
that
right.
child.
Facts.
You also care about the doctors who are, because when it's a conviction, you recognize that these people are lost. And they
Yeah.
2 Timothy 2:26, they've been taken captive by the devil. But
Yeah.
when you couch it in theological terms, political terms, then it's just a cause. It's a
Right. That.
cause that we fight against. And we fight against the left or the right. And these are the people, they're flesh and blood. See, it's theological, it becomes flesh and blood. But when it's theological, you recognize that it's deeper than flesh and blood.
That's right.
These
Because
people,
conviction isn't muddy. It's
it's
not.
not.
It's not unclear.
It's not.
The Lord gives clear conviction, and when conviction is clear, I mean, you have to now deal with it before the Lord. What do you do with that? And it comes along with all of Scripture,
Yeah.
not just one little thing here or there. It's, oh, love thy neighbor, along with look to the interests of others above your own.
100%.
Mad examples. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So like you're saying, if we're concerned about the unborn, which we
Truth.
should be, then we have to be concerned with the one who is considering committing murder.
Right. 100%.
She's what brought her to the point of wanting to end the life of her child.
Right.
What has she believed? What fake news has she
Right.
embraced?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like the same thing with the doctor, like you're saying. I know I'm just building on what you said, but
Nah, but you're killing it because now you're making a connection that's real though.
Yeah, it has to come home for us. It has to be there. Like we're getting ready to partner with Love Life at our church, and they partner with a few other churches in the area. Brian Ottinger works for them down in North Carolina.
Us is out. Brian's
Great,
the
great
homie.
brother. Yeah, yep.
What I do.
So, and the more I think about Love Life and what they do, they're very driven like that. They provide opportunities for the women to actually care for them, to love them, to walk with them. They'll adopt their babies. You know what I'm saying? They'll walk with them through the pregnancy. So that's where we're at now. And as I think about that, I'm now revisiting the way that I viewed abortion up until this point in my walk as a believer, and I'm seeing the holes. I'm like, okay, I see where I went wrong here. I see where I went wrong in this conversation with this young brother who's a Democrat and didn't say hates abortion, but I'm telling him, 5, 6 years ago, fam, if you vote Democrat, you are okay with abortion.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We're having this back and forth going, and so I'm just revisiting the cause conviction concept. It was a cause for me. It was a cause that I could relate to because I love babies and I know God loves babies. So I'm going to push this cause. But how much conviction really was there when I think about my prayer life in light of it?
And this is where believers don't want to hear that. This is where believers will roll their eyes at you because, in all honesty, you don't want to love people like it's too difficult. It's hard to, and it's
crazy
too
hard.
difficult. And but a lot of what makes it hard is that we demand that they take up our causes.
Right. It's self-sacrificial.
It's self-sacrificial.
That's why.
Like, and this is why it gets dangerous because a lot of people are theological, and the ultimate fake news is from the enemy, right? He's the one that disseminates fake news. He's the one that makes people think these are leftist or right policies.
That's right.
No, these are evil things that Jesus never worried about with the politics didn't start with America. There were politics in Rome and Jerusalem and all of it.
That's right.
The Sanhedrin was religiously political,
That's right. And
political.
The world is going to continue to deliver fake news. What you going to do with it, Christian?
100%.
Are we going to look at scripture and analyze everything we see from scripture to determine right and wrong?
Including the people that you respect. And if they're...
As a matter of fact, especially because if you respect them, they're influential in your life. And if they're the ones that are influencing you, you should make sure what they're saying is true.
And not just what they're saying is true, but that the character that they're saying it
they're living it true.
It's matched. Because if it's a cause, then we need to vote and go. And the enemy is the people who are opposite of the cause.
That's right.
As you said, when you talked about, this idea that, if you vote Democrat, you approve. In a two-party political system, bro, it is unrealistic to think that every Christian is going to vote for one party. And it's unrealistic to think that only those who vote for one party are truly Christians.
It's a faulty system. We all know it is.
It's a faulty system.
All know it is, yeah.
And even if one has more moral code than the other on certain issues, it's like, fam, the Lord knows who are His. There are going to be people who are in eternity that didn't even know what a Democrat or Republican was, right?
Yeah.
It's a two-party system. You're going to have genuine people for different reasons vote for different things. But when it's a theological conviction, it's a cause, it's all fake news. They're fake news, whoever it is. But when it's a conviction, it's like, man, I care about these people, even if I think they're wrong in voting this way, even if I think they're wrong about things of racism, even if I think they're wrong in their about particular political means. It's like there's almost a sense of like we act like the Lord isn't gracious or something.
Right.
So again, this is the impact.
If you use the logic of complicity, meaning that if you vote Democrat, then you're complicit to everything they do or whatever. Then, man, you got to go both ways with it and look at the Republican platform. We looked at that what was it, maybe 2 seasons ago or something like that, or maybe last season.
Beginning of season 3, yeah.
And all the misconceptions that were there. So, there's a lot of misconceptions on what is actually being pushed when it comes down to it.
I mean, I'll be honest, most Christians don't go deeper than LGBT and abortion. Like, so what
I did it for years.
They don't go deeper than that. So they just think, we have the moral high ground because if you vote them, therefore LGBT and abortion. And if you're honest, if for people saying I love my country, it's like, well, if you love your country, then you should want these people to have the same thing that the Constitution has. You can't have the Constitution is not the scriptures. So you should want these people to have certain rights, inalienable rights. If you're a constitutionalist, if you believe in the Constitution, then why should someone not have rights because they're gay? Why should they not have rights because they're trans? Why should they not have rights? That's what I'm saying. Like, you're trying to fuse the two, and it's fake news. Mm-hmm. And you accept it because the president, like, it's so telling that in 2016, John MacArthur, Al Mohler, and a couple other guys at that Shepherd's Conference said that God was judging America because Trump was about to be president. And then 4 years later, John MacArthur said to President Trump, no true Christian would vote Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, it was very political of him. It was
It's very political.
very political of him, especially when he was saying that. But then when he's in the White House and he's dealing with the stuff that he was dealing with in California with COVID, and now they were trying to shut the church down, he was in communication with the actual president. He was in communication with Donald Trump. So that kind of, it's like, all right, he's immoral at one point. The next point, it's like, you're being shrewd. I mean, you're using what you can. He was being smart with it.
But when you think about what changed, though, it was just that Trump was crushing. It was theological.
He could align with Trump more than he could align with others.
Right, and I get that. I'm fine with that being the case. But I'm going to end with this for me. How do we know that God wants to protect and preserve what we call American values? Like, how are we so confident that God's will is to make sure that we don't become a Marxist socialist society?
We shouldn't be confident about that, because God's will is that we'll suffer much tribulation to enter the kingdom of heaven.
How do we know that the things that we call American values that we're trying to fight for and hold on to, that we're bitter at other people who vote opposite of us, other Christians, how do we know that that's what God, that those things haven't hindered us? I mean, you look at the history of the church in America, there's some amazingly beautiful things, but I think there's more evil in the history of God's people in this country.
And it makes you wonder why God didn't hand us the Constitution.
Right. Exactly.
Instead of the 10 Commandments.
Exactly. Right. So that's what I think. Like, a lot of these we're talking as if like we're so confident that God wants to uphold American values. If we're being honest, a lot of it is just we just don't want to suffer.
That's right.
And that suffering. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm for as much as people.
I'll go beyond that. I'll just say a lot of it is we just don't want to be uncomfortable.
100%. 100%. 100%. That goes to everything. That's why some people ain't even come back to church yet.
Right.
Because they're just not. They're not even afraid of COVID.
Discomfort has been equated with suffering.
And that's fake news.
That's fake news, homie.
So that's the ideology. So to sum this up, what fake news from Trump did was it gave a lot of people license to view anything that makes them uncomfortable fake news.
That's good.
That's what it did. That's the impact. The evolution of it is now everything that I don't like is essentially equivalent to fake news. I dismiss it. I disagree with it. And let me tell you something. We're going to get our heads clipped in 2024. Because unless the Lord calls Trump to stand before him, that dude's going to run again and he's going to win because the Democrats are horrible. They've done a terrible job. Biden is one of the worst presidents I've ever been alive and have seen with my
He's going to win on the economy alone. I mean, he would have won. Slim. He would have won on the economy alone in 2020 if it weren't for COVID.
My dude, Trump doesn't have to say anything.
Nothing at all.
He just has to show up and let Biden talk and win.
Yep.
The Democrats are done. He's going to win again. And let me tell you something. All that anger, that racism, that white supremacy, all that's going to come back full force. Remember that parable where Jesus talked about a demon leaves and then the man is swept clean and put in order. And then the demon decides to return back, but he brings 7 demons more powerful than himself. And then that man is worse off than he was at first. I hope I'm wrong, brother. I hope I am wrong. But I believe this as strongly as I'm saying it to you and you can hear it, that is what's going to happen in 2024. If the church doesn't wake up, and not everyone's going to do it, but if some of us don't really wake up, recognize what's happening, and start to prepare for this, we're going to get rocked. It's going to be right back to, but I think the Lord's going to do it just to expose. I think he's exposing. I think America and the church in America has gotten away with a lot of stuff. They say God bless America. God has blessed America, but has America blessed God? Has the church done that? There's a lot we could do as a people, but we just don't, because again, it's theoretical. The fake news impacts us. So we just dismissed it, and we dismiss it mostly politically. The lens that many of us see things through is politics.
Yeah.
It's left or right. What do you evaluate? What do you agree? What do you? Then they get offended. Then I've had people get offended at me for saying I don't even vote. I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
Oh yeah, because you're not a good American.
Yeah, I'm not a good American. I'm not. I've had people
so
tell me this.
You're the problem.
Yeah, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. I'm the problem. And I'm just like, hey, good. I'm good. You know, as a pastor, I need to care about people who are going to vote both sides. And I need to be free to speak to the deeds of darkness that I see wherever and not have people pigeonhole me because they think you voted this way, so that's what you mean. I'm not so.
Fam, you got to ramp up your church discipline, fam.
Yeah,
you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right.
Yeah, bro. That's not going to happen, family. That's not going to happen. So for me, I'm not even going to play the game. I'm good with standing before the Lord and being like, I didn't even focus on that because I trust God's sovereignty. And as much as Trump was God's man, so was Biden. So was Biden. It wasn't like Trump brought God in and then Biden brought the devil in and God's like, hey, how'd that happen? If that's the case, and you have a low view of God and a high high view of the enemy. So fake news, don't buy it, man. There's so much that we ran through a lot, but this is a lot of information. There's a lot to this, man.
For sure.
When I was doing the research for this, bro, I was like, golly, we could go in so many directions, but we just stayed in a particular lane. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Thank you for those of you watching and riding with us. We appreciate it. We apologize for missing a couple weeks here and there. It's just been hectic for both of us for different reasons, but we're grateful for you. Thank you for our Patreon supporters, man. You guys are the real MVPs. We don't do that much, and you guys still give what you give monthly, and we're grateful for that, man. Thank you. We understand if you don't want to continue to give. We are wanting to do some things for those who are do some things again. We were doing a phone call and things like that, and we enjoyed that. There's some things that we want to do this summer for those of you who are on Patreon, but we're not going to ask people to do stuff until we're doing stuff for what the people that have been supporting us. So we're grateful for you. But listen, beware. The fake news is real. This is not an April Fool's joke. And beware of April Fool's tomorrow. You're going to see a lot of wild stories of people trying to get you.
A lot of fake news.
A lot of fake news tomorrow because it's April Fool's. You know what I'm saying? All right, so if you want to find out what's up with the Wolverine, you can go to hishypeman.com.
Yes,
check them out. Go there. Nigga, we got some stuff coming up soon.
Check it.
New videos coming up. Don't forget and go to curtkennedy.com. You'll find all my stuff there, social media. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, Curt Kennedy's Corner. If you go to curtkennedy.com, on the right side, you'll see all my stuff that you can get to. And Curt Kennedy's Corner is there. We thank you. We're over 300 subscribers without even really working at it. So I guarantee in 5 years, we're going to get to 1,000, bro.
I heard you on Hamilton's show, man. You did your thing, B.
Oh, I appreciate it, bro. Yeah, thank you, man.
The
stool. Sturdy stool, baby. And it's not what you think. It means by stool. But now that's what I'm at, bro. I'm trying to really develop that, man. I'm trying to develop it because that's what I think will be helpful, a helpful process for the church to prepare for this next wave of vitriol. You know,
it was good. What I was encouraged by, just real quick, was how biblical it was. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like I know you. We tend to be more philosophical here. We try to be as philosophical as possible, just because we want to hit everybody.
Yeah.
But this joint was very biblical. It was very good. It was encouraging.
Yeah, man. It's definitely, man, because I think that's the process. You gotta come from the scriptures and try to develop, what things that the scriptures say so that you can do that. So no, I appreciate it, man. I'm grateful for Abe and that, man, having me come on there. And there's some other people that want to push this idea. So I got to actually write part 3 and drop it next week because I'm tired of people asking me when's the part 3 coming out. So I'm grateful for that, but I'm definitely going to push it, bro. The sturdy stool, man. I definitely want to push it, and by God's grace, we'll see it happen. So be praying for that. Be praying for the Guess Who's Back internet game that we're going to be doing. Just mess with y'all, man. Grateful for y'all. Thanks for riding with us. I'm Curt Kennedy. He's Stract the Wolverine, and we're out of here, y'all. Grace and peace.